You're listening to From the Pink Seats podcast of the State of Louisville Podcast Network. Now, here's your hosts, Jacob Lane, Matt McGavic, and Vince Lococo.
The record shows that this is season 4 from the Pink Seats podcast. Matt McGavic, Jacob Lane, the host, alongside Vince Lococo tonight. We are back for 2023 football. We are here for the 4th season of the show. Gentlemen, how we doing?
And to think we started this podcast in the middle of the COVID season.
It's crazy. We've come a long way, man. Second head coach. I mean, man. Vince, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Whenever you guys started during the COVID season, I was in the middle of just trying to keep your guys' entertainment alive.
That's right.
So, you're welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, then you joined the show, and history was written.
And all downhill since then.
That's right. And continue rolling downhill like a massive dumpster fire that we are. Totally kidding. But we're excited. Football season is back as we kick off a new season here of the show and really start to dive into the season. It's just a couple of weeks away. About a month and a half, essentially.
40-ish days, yeah.
Yeah, man. And so we are excited to get into the thick of things. We're going to be joined by a special guest tonight. We'll get into that here momentarily as we dive into schematics and X and O's. I know we've been doing a lot of interviews. We've got two more to come. But I'm excited to get into some really specific types of X's and O's. It's time.
It's time.
So we'll be joined tonight by Drew Schneider, who is writer over at Hammer and Rails, covered Purdue football and also covers Clemson football. Nice little combination. So very familiar with Louisville in general. And so tonight we are going to talk X's and O's. And when I tell you that reading through Drew's work, without knowing much about Drew at all, he seems to me like to be the Keith Wynn of Purdue football in terms of the X's and O's, the film breakdowns. So we are really excited about that because that's what we do here. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things over the course of a 2-episode series here with Drew as we dive into the offense and defense. Drew, welcome on in, man. How are you?
Doing good, man. I'm just sweating, dude. I've been sweating for like 2 months, but I'm sweating even more today. It's super hot down here in Athens. I don't know why anybody comes and plays football in this town because, buddy, it's hot.
Yeah, man.
Kirby must be selling something good, and they gotta have a lot of ice. Cause man,
it's the same here, dude. It's constant swamp ass weather around these parts. You just got to be prepared for the multi-shirt changeover throughout the day. 4, 5, 6, 7 shirts for us sweaty guys. Like that's just how it goes.
I've just gone straight tank tops now, but straight tank tops. We cut the sleeves off. It's a little easier, so we're doing all right.
And I'm like in between the like skinny but like kind of chubby, so I can't really wear my go shirtless. But if I had the physique, I would. Trust me, I'd be shirtless all the time. JR,
my 9-year-old is constantly embarrassed by me. I don't care. So whatever.
I can relate, man. Well, hey, let's talk some football, specifically Jeff Brohm. I want to ask you this. Let's start just kind of take me back into the Wayback Machine here. The Louisville job opens for the second time. Obviously, we know what happened back in what that was 2019, where Jeff Brohm ultimately said no. But take me through just the life of a Purdue fan over the course of the job opening and Jeff Brohm ultimately leaving to the new coach being hired, and just where the fans are mentally with that whole situation.
I think this go around, everybody was kind of resigned to the fact that this was happening. The first time came around, Louisville and Purdue were kind of in the same spot, but I felt like the second time around that Brohm's walking into a better situation, isn't having to do a full rebuild. And so I think the Louisville job, the second time around, it was too much, mama calls. Sometimes you got to answer, and, no hard feelings for that. I don't think Purdue holds that against Jeff Brohm. I mean, we've got Matt Painter as our head coach, so we get basketball coach, so we get the calling the alumni back to the mothership when things are needed.
Like I said, Drew, you are the football X's and O's guy, it seems, for Purdue. Just real quickly, tell me a little bit how you got to cover Purdue specifically.
I was writing some stuff on Purdue that wasn't just on my own blog, and Travis Miller, who was running Hammer and Rails and started Hammer and Rails before, and then it sort of moved over to SB Nation. And so I was just like, I'm writing all this stuff for free. I may as well eventually get paid for it. And so And so, yeah, sort of how I went. I have an English degree, and I've coached and played pretty much everything. And so, I'm a sports guy who can also like write and talk. So I'm in demand a little bit.
must be nice. But kind of going back to Brohm and the seeming inevitability that he would end up at Louisville given the opportunity. After that first sort of semi-flirtation with the job opening back in 19, were Purdue fans kind of resigned to the fact that it almost seemed inevitable at some point that he might leave?
Yeah. I mean, I think Purdue is probably in the same situation like Kansas basketball was with Roy Williams over the years, and you're just kind of like, eventually it's gonna happen. Like, he's gonna go back. It's too much, too big of a draw. They still got the family ties in town, and it's just a short drive down. And it was just sort of, when is going to be a good time for him? And as soon as Satterfield jumped to Cincinnati, I was like, well, that settles that pretty quick. I think Louisville had one guy in mind when that happened, and I don't think Purdue could offer. I mean, Purdue's got Big Ten money. That's all I keep hearing is they've got the war chest from the Big Ten network. But there wasn't a contract Purdue could offer Jeff Brohm to keep him from what looks like a pretty decent Louisville job coming in now after Satterfield, instead of coming in after Bobby P's blow up the last year.
Yeah, Vince, friend here, has some PTSD from that year being a player on that team and can relate. And we've been doing a series this offseason where we've chatted with former players, and they've all talked about the dynamics between Jeff Brohm and Bobby Petrino. So it's interesting you say that he didn't follow up Bobby and instead is following up Satterfield. This episode that we're starting here with the first here, we're really going to focus on the offense. So let's start with the most important position on the field, and that is the quarterback position. And one of the things that we've talked about when we have previewed the season and kind of broken down the film of Jack Plummer is the fact that obviously he's a big pickup because he was productive at California last season. And prior to that had been in the Jeff Brohm scheme for a couple of years and is familiar. That's the kind of pickup that you want when you're, trying to have quick success. But there's been a lot of conversation about Jack Plummer in terms of not being, really productive at Purdue and not being the guy that many thought he would. So I kind of want to start with that, man. What do you think of Jack Plummer overall, and what are strengths and weaknesses that Louisville fans can kind of be prepared to watch for?
So I wrote an article right when this quarterback controversy was happening. I think it was 2 years ago. And Plummer started this season. So O'Connell finished the previous season because Plummer broke his leg or ankle. And then there was they went through camp, spring camp, fall camp. Nobody knew who was going to start. Plummer took the job and then lost it after Notre Dame. I was always on Team O'Connell just after the first couple of games. Plummer's problem at Purdue, and I don't know if it was physical or mental, but he would not throw the ball down the field. And Jeff Brohm needs somebody to throw the ball down the field. So the first couple games, when Plummer was throwing, 70%, completion percentage, but those passes were going 5 yards. And then what you would see, sort of almost starting what Notre Dame did, that basically O'Connell took the job, is they just dropped their linebackers and said, you're either going to throw it in front of our linebackers or we're going to tackle you, or you're going to throw it deep because we're just going to flood this middle zone and make you either dink it or throw it deep, take the top of it, and Plummer would not take the top off of the defense. And so they just kept squishing us. We'd throw the ball to David Bell on a little swing pass, and he'd immediately have three guys hanging on him. Or same with, Rondale. We'd throw a little drag route to Rondale Moore, and he'd try to turn the corner. And then he tried to turn the corner again. He just kept running into people until he finally got out of bounds because Plummer in his time at Purdue just did not let it go. And I think I saw that less in the previous year before he got hurt. And then, when he came back, he just was not letting the ball go and hitting those tight windows. And that's what you need. That Jeff Brohm's offense pretty much requires that.
And that's actually kind of a good segue, because you mentioned that's something Plummer needed to do in this Jeff Brohm offense, was throw the ball down the field. And ever since Brohm came on, we've heard about, this is more of an open pro style type of offense. But to those who haven't had the luxury of, sitting through Purdue games and having an intimate knowledge of what is going on the football field, what would you say are some of the core philosophies when it comes to specifically the passing offense?
Brohm is so like a lot of times I say Brohm runs a tech mobile offense, so you can hit the A button and pass it to the wide receiver, or the B button and pass it to the tight end, and that's his deal. Like, he's very good at scheming individual players open. Charlie Jones, David Bell, Rondale Moore, and then you had last year Payne Durham at tight end, and you had, and oh my gosh, my brain is freezing up. He plays tight end for the for the Rams now. Bryson.
I know who you're talking about, but
Hopkins, Bryson Hopkins. There it is, Bryson Hopkins, and he was big for Purdue. And so those are the two things. He's going to throw it to the number one receiver. He's going to throw it to the tight end. Everybody else is going to sort of get the scraps. But Purdue's always had a primary receiver and tight end, and then everybody else is, almost an afterthought. It's kind of weird. So last year was Charlie Jones, and then the year before that it was David Bell, and then it was Rondale Moore. And this first year at Purdue, it's funny, sort of what I want to talk about, because you might see this a little bit at Louisville, is it took Jeff Brohm almost half that season to figure out who he was going to throw it to in the Iowa game. He found this JUCO transfer named Anthony Mahungu from France, and you had not seen him at all the entire season. And all of a sudden, he goes off against Iowa, and then Purdue's offense just catches fire at the end of the season. They win their last 4 games, beat to get bowl eligible, beat Arizona in the bowl game. But really, as soon as he found that guy that he liked to throw it to, the offense came together. So that's really what that's what he did at Purdue.
You mentioned that the tech mobile offense is actually a good way to describe that, because just looking at some of the pure numbers, I mean, it seems like he very much subscribes to the feed the studs notion. But in the same breath, you mentioned that it seems like everyone else kind of gets the scraps. And just looking at the pure numbers, it seems like that also includes the running backs to an extent, because it's on paper that the stats per game nationally were not good, but then you've got a walk-on and Jevin Maccabee goes off for over 900 rushing yards. Would you say that what is the running backs, I guess, overall role in this pass heavy offense? How much of a factor is the running back truly in this offense?
Jeff Brohm will run the ball when it is easy to run the ball. Jeff Brohm does not run the ball when it's hard to run the ball.
So the opposite of Scott Satterfield is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, Scott Satterfield runs the ball when it's easy and when it's difficult to run the ball.
Jeff Brohm would much rather throw the ball. If he can throw the ball, he's gonna throw the ball. The running backs, I mean, Purdue had just the first year he was there, he had a couple of holdover running backs that he trusted. And then there was a couple seasons, say 2020, 2021, where he just didn't trust the backs, and they didn't do anything. 2022, Devin Maccabee sort of hit the scene as a walk-on, and he had a little trust in him. He had a little more wiggle than any other of the backs, and he was a sort of a better receiver out of the backfield. Yeah, running the ball is just not what he likes to do. You can tell. I mean, everybody knows he wants to throw the ball. That's his bag, which is weird because when he was at Western Kentucky, and when Purdue hired Brohm, I sold the Purdue fans on this guy runs a balanced offense. He looks like he likes to throw the ball, but look at what he did at Western Kentucky. The last 2 years, he's got a couple guys over 1,000 yards, averaging 5 yards a carry. and that just never happened at Purdue.
How much do you think of that is he gets to the Big Ten, right? And he sees these defenses that have these just massive defensive linemen, just the traditional stud defensive teams, right? Like think of the best defenses you've seen over the last several years in the Big Ten. And he gets there, and how much of it is him saying, well, shit, like I do like to throw the ball and I do like to run the ball, but we're going to have to probably throw the ball to set ourselves apart here versus him just being unable to kind of figure out how to get a rhythm running the football throughout those years.
Probably a little A, a little B. Because like you say, it's the Big Ten, and one of sort of the prompts y'all had there, like looking at is like kind of explain Purdue's flops in some weird games. And he doesn't, like Nevada, he wouldn't run the ball against Nevada. And he wouldn't run the ball a lot of times where you're like, okay, I get not running the ball against like Michigan or Wisconsin, but come on, boys, it's Nevada in the fourth quarter and we're fading. Let's just hand the ball off and get out of town. And yeah, he's not down for that. If he thinks he's got a rhythm passing the ball, he's going to pass the ball till the end of the game. He will occasionally get a rhythm running the ball. I mean, he did that against IU a few times. He's got a couple games. That big upset against Ohio State, he got in a pretty decent rhythm running the ball, and gouged them for some big runs. But in general, I think a lot of it is just like he likes calling pass plays, and he thinks that he's going to beat you doing that, and he will do it if he's up 30, up 3, down 10. Like, it does not matter. He's going to throw it.
So when Brohm and Purdue did get in a rhythm running the ball, what did that look like? Was it more north-south? Was it stretching outside the tackles? What is the most successful Brohm running game look like?
I liked last year, he ran a lot of outside zone with McGavic, where he just sort of stretched that out and let the running, put the running back on that line and just let the back find that cutback lane where he just, washed everything down and have McGavic sort of cut it back. I like that better. We just never really have the offensive line. I like, like I said, I covered Kansas State, and God, they're just beautiful. Like, offensive line is just like pornography. It's just like, oh my God, everybody's pulling, the center is pulling, the right guard is pulling around and leading the sweep on the left. And Brohm just never really got that. I liked it more than just the zone blocking, blocking down and the uncovered guys climbing and trying to get to that second level. And also, he hits some quick hitters there early in his career at Purdue with like DJ Knox. That's sort of what he did against Ohio State, is he'd run, and then just hit like a real quick running back draw through the A gap. And that busted a good bit just because teams were just so looking out for or rushing up the field. Draws were pretty good because teams come after Jeff Brohm offenses because they're going to challenge him to run the ball. And they're going to do that by sending their defensive ends, sending their tackle. The defensive tackles are coming. They're not holding. They're not clogging the gaps. They're getting after it. They're coming after the quarterback because you're going to make Purdue run the. Or when John is there, if Purdue's going to run the ball and beat you, then good job for Purdue. That's what they're going to let you do, though.
Vince, do you remember or recall a time when Bobby Petrino was here? I think this would have been your, redshirt freshman, sophomore year, 2017. One of the biggest issues that plagued them with running the football. I'm just going to ask you, do you remember what it was? If I had to just quiz you.
Lamar would never give it.
That's honestly a good point. But do you remember how bad Louisville was on the goal line running the football? I mean, we would go first down, Jeremy Smith, second down, Jeremy Smith, third down, Dave Williams, fourth down, Jeremy Smith. Yeah, he's blocked it out of his memory.
Because 2-10 was so bad. It's just like Heisman Trophy. We got beat by LSU and Mississippi State, and other than that, everything else is kind of a wash.
Yeah. Well, my point being is we've seen one of the things I found interesting, Drew, in kind of reviewing a lot of the kind of articles and film breakdowns that you've done over time is seeing this kind of continued issue in the red zone with running the football in short yardage situations, being first and goal on the 5-yard line, the 3-yard line, and them taking 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, chances to get the ball in and ultimately, either not scoring and having to kick a field goal or turning the ball over. What's the fundamental breakdown there, right? Because with Bobby Petrino, I could never figure it out because his first time around, they could score at will on the goal line with running backs. Obviously Michael Bush helps that quite a bit. But this time, the second time around, right? Jeremy Smith was a big pounder. You had other guys like a Malik Williams, who was lesser known to maybe nationally, but they struggled to get the football in the goal line.
Offensive line guys fire off the ball.
Yeah, that's the problem at Purdue too. When you got your guys pass pro, and then you get inside the 20, you're like, all right, guys, bite down, let's get after it, and it's just not there. At least it wasn't for Purdue, where it is part of it is the running game. I've never looked at Brohm's running scheme and said this is what Brohm likes to do. I think Brohm ran the ball because he had to, not because he wanted to, and it was just a lot of sort of generic A-gap stuff. Maybe he'll slide off and try to like pull the tight end through the B gap and use him as a lead. But it was always a finesse team. It felt like that Purdue's going to finesse, and if you shrunk the field and turned it into a fight, it was a struggle to get. A lot of times I said, I would rather Purdue be like second or like third and like 5 than third and 2. Like I would love to see like the conversion ratios of that, because I would rather Purdue under Brohm be 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 than 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, because it's just whenever that strengths, he just struggled. It seems like when it came down to like, I'm going to punch y'all in the face, we're going to get 3 yards. That was not the strength of Purdue.
So you mentioned earlier just watching Kansas State football and watching how much in motion those offensive linemen are in that offensive system. Is that something that Jeff Brohm O-lines just don't do? Are they more so reliant on just straight ahead?
Mm-hmm. Pass pro, zone block, more of a zone blocking scheme, power scheme where they're pulling their guards. And some of it's personnel, man. They just could not recruit offensive linemen. Like they just could not recruit, and they got rid of. So I don't know, and so I don't want to talk bad about anybody. But Dale Williams, for whatever reason, he was the O-line coach at Purdue for the whole Brohm era, and he did not come to Louisville, which was interesting because I think he thought he was coming to Louisville, but I'm not sure exactly how that went down. But he did not have the guys to get it done. Purdue really relied on a lot of transfers, and just could not recruit offensive line. So, and that could be part of the problem, and that could be fixed at Louisville through recruiting. I don't think Brohm put together anything better than an average line at Purdue. That was like peak, was like C+ probably, and like the bottom was like F-. And so
see, this is the stuff that like I would have no idea about without talking to somebody covering Purdue, because you would look at them, right, and they're able to do a lot of, and I know this is probably not indicative of their offensive line, but they're able to do a lot of quick hitting, like get the ball out of their quarterback's hands fast, move quick. Like that would make you think that they have athletic offensive linemen who are able to keep, but no, it doesn't sound like. I mean, it really sounds like it's just this kind of like hodgepodge offensive line to just kind of put the pieces together enough to block for the quarterback.
Yeah, I always used to say, like, sometimes I was like, God, if we're just going to run the air raid, let's just call it the air raid and run the air raid, because that's what it looked like several years. It was just like, this is the air raid. We're going to go in the gun. Quarterback's going to catch the snap, and it's a race. Who can get the ball off first? The quarterback gets the ball off from the quick hitter before the defensive end buries the quarterback. That was some of the problem. That was sort of the offense for a while. And that got better. The offensive line did improve from like really bad to like serviceable. Last year was serviceable. The center was really good. He was probably Purdue's best offensive line recruit, and he's started as a freshman at center. And has started the whole, his entire career. And they got transfer tackle. And it's never Purdue. In the beginning, I kept telling people he's recruiting these guys, these tall, athletic, skinny guys, and he's going to turn them into tackles and guards who can move. And they always just sort of stayed sort of skinny and tall, and that was it.
I mean, I don't know.
Y'all picked up. Y'all picked up Eric Miller.
Yeah,
he's good. He's serviceable. He's not bad. He was from Ohio. He was a great basketball player and a good basketball player in high school. He was one of those tall.
I just randomly, no reason. But can he do a backflip? I just asking.
I don't know if he can do a backflip. He probably could do it when he was, we recruited him. He was like 250, 260, and where he is now. But he's all right. He's all right. He's sort of been play a little left tackle, play a little right tackle, whatever's needed. Never really secured that job like you thought he probably would as an athlete. But again, he's a mid 3-star guy who's sort of like we're hoping he's going to be better later on in his career. There was very few offensive linemen that Brohm recruited at Purdue where you're like, that's the dude. That dude looks like out the box. We're gonna take care of business with this guy. A lot of us we're gonna see 3 years of what this looks like. Can he stay as quick at 300 pounds as he's at 260 now? Who did y'all hire as the offensive line coach? Because like I said, I know Williams did not make that move with Brohm.
Richard Owens. Yeah, Ryan Wallace came with Jeff.
Ryan Wallace is tight end. Right. Yeah, no, it was Richard Owens.
Yeah, Vince, you want to speak on Richard Owens? That was one of your coaches back in 2018.
He just pretty hard-nosed guy, somebody that can definitely get guys to fire off the ball, I would say. A hard ass in a good way. Cares about the guys, loves on the guys, but it will definitely cut you up and down the field if you do not have the right assignment. So, he's awesome. He's a good guy to play for sure. I expect the offensive line to be, improved from what Louisville had last year just because of him and his – willingness to get guys to play and to play hard. It's almost like you have to play hard for him. Otherwise, he's just it's going to be a bad day, and bad days turn into bad weeks and turn into bad months, and that turns into the transfer portal.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. One of the things that I find kind of, as an underrated storyline with Louisville's offensive line this year, and really listening to Drew, to you talk about the offensive line, is the guys, how many they return this year. They bring back three starters. We'll call it three. Michael Gonzalez, really more reserve last year, but you have Renato Brown, who's a right tackle. You have your center in Brian Hudson, who is an honorable mention ACC guy, probably going to be an all ACC guy this year. And then I'm missing one Michael Gonzalez. I just said that. And one of the things that I find interesting about them is they're coming off of being coached by a guy named Nick Cardwell, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with. You've covered Clemson, so you might be familiar with Nick Cardwell. He is a fiery, feisty guy. Before that, it was Dwayne Ledford. These guys, I think a lot of the times that what you inherit becomes what you are based off of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But these guys are feisty offensive linemen. They are going to kind of play with that edge. It's cost them a ton during the Satterfield era because they did play so aggressive at times. But I think it's interesting that what makes this team really interesting, and I think this is a good segue into talking a little bit more about the passing offense, is that there is a lot of things in place for Jeff Brohm that really makes them a strong team. A lot of veterans, you got a lot of fast guys, you got a lot of different things. But one thing they don't have that I'm really curious about, and this is what I want to ask you, is the tight end spot. Like this year, we're looking at Louisville bringing in a really dynamic tight end as a freshman, and he's probably going to end up seeing the field. Just to give you some reference, Matt said that he looks like what'd you say, Matt? It looks like a Pixar animated Mr. Mrs. Incredible.
He's got an ass like a Pixar mom.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it is. This guy's built like a bus, right? But Josh Lifson is the presumed starter. He's a former walk-on. He caught one pass for a touchdown last year, which Ian Pfeiffer, if you're listening, I know that makes you proud. But just
got 3 in the spring game, right?
Yeah, and he played well, man. Yeah, he played well. But tell me what a Jeff Brohm offense without a tight end looks like. That's something to concern Louisville fans. Is that unproven tight end?
Yes and no, because he's going to throw it to the tight end. So that dude better be ready.
Better just be ready.
he better be ready to play. He better be ready to catch the ball. If he's ready to catch the ball, Jeff Brohm's going to throw in the ball because that's the B button, or at least it was at Purdue. That he's going to control the middle of the field. Brohm likes to spread the field wide and split the safeties down the middle with the tight end. That's one of his sort of pet plays, where he'll go 4 wide, 3 wide boundary, pull the safeties wide, and then send either Hopkins or Durham just straight up the gut. And he loves that play. And so he's going to throw it. The tight end's been ready to catch it because he did that at Purdue the entire time he was there.
That's a concern. I mean, we've talked a little bit about that. We'll get into it quite a bit over the next couple of weeks as we dive into each of the kind of the positions and stuff. But I mean, you don't have a proven option there. One guy I do want to call out here real quickly, and this might mean something to you, may not. For a lot of fans, they're going to kind of be like, who is this? But I was going back through the archives of recruiting, and I did find it interesting that Nate Kariski, who is a backup tight end from Washington, D.C., didn't play last year for Louisville, was recruited by Purdue. That's a guy I'd keep an eye on for Louisville because that's somebody who obviously clearly fit the Purdue system to be offered back when Jeff Brohm was recruiting that for that position back in, that would have been 2022. He's a guy who fits the bill as a pass catcher, but didn't really get onto the field last year for a number of reasons. Louisville's tight ends, Vince, their number one thing was what? Blocking, right? That's what they did under Scott Satterfield. They blocked. That's why Vince,
outside Marshawn.
Yeah, outside of Marshawn, they blocked, right? And so that's going to be a really interesting transition this year, and kind of building off of that, right? So when looking at the offense, the tight end is such an important focal point. But back to the quarterback position, when you talk about Jack Plummer, you talk about that tight end being, kind of like my son, right? My son carries around this dirty, old, worn tag blanket, and it's ripped, and it's he's a 1-year-old, and he's always rubbing it on his face, and it's his security blanket, right? For Jack Plummer, that's what his tight end, it's his tag blanket. But for Jack Plummer, when you're talking about being able to dissect a defense, is this a guy who can, if that tight end is kind of the security blanket and always dumps down, is this a guy still though that can read the field? Is this a guy that can go through multiple progressions in a passing play? Or is this more of a guy who's just going to look for that first option? If it's not there, I'm looking for my tag blanket.
Yeah, second thing. I've covered a lot of Purdue and I wrote down a lot of plays, and I could never figure out the quarterback progression. I don't know if there was one. I assume there is. But it was last year. It was stare at Charlie Jones and stare at Charlie Jones and stare at Charlie Jones and hope to God that you don't get sacked and throw the ball. So I say that it's A or B. A lot of it's either A or B. So he's going to run the play of the tight end, or he's going to run the play to the wide receiver. I don't know how much Brohm puts on the quarterback to read the field. I think Brohm likes to read the field a lot and likes to do this pre-snap stuff. And I'm not sure how many Purdue quarterbacks actually are like, all right, I'm going to look at my boundary. I'm going to go to the field, then I'm going to go to the boundary, and I'm going to check down the tight end. I felt a lot of it is like, all right, we're running this play to the wide receiver. He's going to get open at this spot. I'm going to hold the ball and pat it. Is he open? Maybe if there's a spot to get it into, the QB is going to let it go. Like Aiden O'Connell put a lot of balls into tiny little windows to Charlie Jones, and then you sort of will pull back from the field and go, but like the boundary dude is like open. Like this dude is open, and there O'Connell is threading a needle like over the linebacker underneath the safety, hitting that crossing route to Jones instead of just saying, I'm just going to take 8 yards right here on the sideline because my other dude is just the quarterback's bored because he's just sort of like, oh, it's not the ball's not coming this way.
When you look at Brohm's scheme and how he likes to run his scheme and his tendencies, were you able to pick up like what sort of defensive schemes or setups that this offense had more success against than others? And simultaneously, are there types of defenses that this offensive scheme and mindset struggles against?
Yeah. So pressure up the middle hurts Purdue a lot. You didn't get pressure up the middle. That hurt Purdue a good bit. He did not do well with defenses that could get up in his quarterback's face and maybe make him go to that second read or and third read and get off that first read. So just defenses that get pressure, quick pressure up the middle, that bothers everybody. And again, with Jack Plummer, the problem was just that he's got to let the ball go, because that was teams were just like, okay, you want to throw these, 10 to 12 yard crossing routes. We're just gonna drop our linebackers into that 10 to 12 yard zone, and you should feel free to run crossing routes against, a couple of safeties sitting there and 3 linebackers sitting there, and the corners almost sitting there too, and then just daring you to either throw it deep, but really just inviting you to throw it short and then they rally up and tackle. And that was Purdue's problem with Plummer, is Plummer checks the ball out a lot. So if you want somebody that's gonna read the offense and go, that's not there, check, throw it to the short guy, toss it out to the running back in the flat. Hit the tight end, just sort of sitting at 3-4 yards for a pickup. Plummer will do that. He loves to do that. That was what he was good at Purdue. That's why he had his completion percentage was so high. Was that he would get off that first read, and that's why O'Connell took over, because O'Connell stayed with that first read and he held the ball and he was gonna gun it into that window. That was the same thing with Elijah Sindelar. What made him a good quarterback for Purdue. He was a big dude that just stood in the pocket and just gunned it to the primary. And Brohm was good at getting the primary receiver open. I mean, I say like it's a bad thing, but Brohm is really good at getting the primary receiver open. That's what the Brohm offense does. That's what he does. He gets his primary dude open. It's really a pro-style offense in that sort of vein, where he's going to find a matchup. And if he finds a matchup, he's going to beat it to death. I was talking about that first year against Iowa. I felt bad for that cornerback because he found this Anthony Mahungu guy on the outside in single coverage and like on one deep ball. And Brown was like, oh boy. Oh, it's on. It's on. I swear, like 10 more of those passes. And that's how they won that game. And that's how they got hot. If he finds something he likes, especially if he finds a mismatch and he creates one, he's going to eat it up all day. So in the passing game, the running game's a little different. He doesn't have the patience for that. But if he finds something he likes, he's going to make you stop it. Let's talk about trick plays real quick. Learn to love the flea flicker. He's going to run the flea flicker. He's going to run the fake flea flicker. The fake started working a lot better than the real one, because the quarterback pitches it, the running back is going to probably take the ACC a couple of years to catch on. It took the Big Ten a couple of years to catch on. That you saw in the Big Ten, as soon as he made that pitch where it's like, the running back sort of runs up into like right behind the center and stops. The defense was just starting to bail it in the Big Ten after like Brohm's second year, because he loves that flea flicker.
Flea flicker's a fun play. I mean, it rarely works, like you said, but it's a lot of fun. So let me ask you this then. We'll wrap up the episode here on the offensive side of things before we jump into defense here on the second episode. But with the offense particularly, this is more of a long-term question and a development question. I don't think Brian Brohm is going to be in Louisville very long. I don't think that he is going to be an offensive coordinator for too much longer. The guy has proven himself as being a developer of talent. As somebody who can help with an offense. Obviously, I know Jeff Brohm is the offensive coordinator in a lot of ways, but he has the title and he comes back home in a role where he's got Jack Plummer this year. But when you look forward to the future, Louisville did bring in another Purdue guy in Brady Allen, who will compete to be that top quarterback, a former 4-star recruit. They also brought in Pierce Clarkson, who was a Scott Satterfield recruit who stayed within the class, who is more of a small Russell Wilson type of player who Jeff Brohm has really never traditionally had at quarterback. So when you talk about the development spot, let's talk about just Brian Brohm and Jeff Brohm as developers of talent.
It is tough, man. So the weird thing that I'd like to bring up about Jeff Brohm is, man, it seems like the dude should be able to recruit quarterbacks, but only one quarterback he recruited, Jack Plummer, started at Purdue. This entire time he was there. He only had one guy that he recruited that started a game and that was Jack Plummer. And he got replaced. So Blau and Sindelar were Hazel recruits, and he couldn't figure out which one he liked, and he liked them both, and he played them both. And every year it was like, who's going to be the quarterback, Blau or Sindelar? And then one of them would get hurt, and the other one would start, which is literally how their careers went. And then, Sindelar finally retired because he was just hurt all the time. And then, right? Oh, that poor dude, man. He was so good in high school. He blew his knee, destroyed his knee in the state tournament, and he came in, and then he blew it again, and he blew it again, and it was just like, come on, this dude's got like an NFL arm, but like by the time he got to his senior year, it's just like watching me get out of bed, watching him get off the bench. It's just like, oh God, I'm getting out there, guys. Okay. And so, Brohm finds a guy. He hoards quarterbacks, but he sometimes can't decide which one he likes. But I'd like to see Brady Allen. I was a big Brady Allen fan. I think Brady Allen is going to be a good player. I was excited when Purdue landed him, and I was hoping he would stay. Out of sort of everybody that left, I think he was the one where like, he's got the raw goods to get it done. Raw is sort of word. You don't get a lot of great high school quarterbacks coming out of Indiana, for the most part. And Brady played at a pretty decent sized high school. He's got a lot of talent. I could see him doing well. Or I could see him being a guy like, it is weird because I'm going to say there's a 4-star guy that we recruited from New Jersey or New York a couple of years ago to play quarterback, and I can't remember his name right now. He transferred out, but 3 years and you just never saw him. Our either starting or backup tight end, Paul Pierre-Fieri, was a Brohm quarterback recruit. Purdue's starting Hudson Card this year, and really doesn't have any holdovers from Brohm. So
really interesting.
I would say that if I was a Louisville fan, number one is Brohm going to find a quarterback. He finds a quarterback. He won the Big Ten the division last year. Found the quarterback, had the quarterback in place, comfortable with the quarterback. Good, but he will shuffle quarterbacks, and if the quarterback doesn't do what he wants, it is not the longest leash.
All great insight here from Drew Schneider of Hammer and Rails. Very exciting stuff for the offense when you talk about Jeff Brohm. And obviously that's what you get with Jeff Brohm. That's what you always talk about from the moment he's been hired, is the offensive prowess and what he's going to bring. We've seen a lot of great recruiting this offseason, bringing in guys like Jamari Thrash, Jack Plummer, Isaac Guriendo. We've got some guys coming into Louisville, and there's certainly a lot of talent, and it's going to be really interesting to see what ends up happening with the offensive side of things. And not much longer to wait. Only about, like Matt said beginning, only about 40 more days until football gets underway. That's going to wrap us up here for the offense. Thank you, Drew, so much for sitting down and talking with us and previewing exactly what Louisville fans can expect and what it means to be led by Jeff Brohm as a head coach. We will be back with episode number 2 as we preview the defense and look at what you can expect next season on the defensive side. Till next time, go Cards.